Good evening. Welcome to the Glazov Gang. Our gang members this evening: Doris Montrose, President of Children of Jewish Holocaust Survivors; Ben Shapiro, Shillman Journalism Fellow at the David Horowitz Freedom Center; and Eric Allen Bell, writer and filmmaker. Glazov Gang members, welcome to the Glazov Gang.
Thanks.
Thank you.
We already have two initiated members, Ben and Eric. Doris, you are a new member, and we have to warn all new Glazov Gang members. Gang members tell her that you can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave. Okay? On to the serious part of the program. This segment is titled, "To Build or Not to Build a Mosque in America." Eric Allen Bell, I want to begin with you in terms of how we can balance having a free society, freedom of religion, but at the same time not allowing a political ideology to exploit its quote-unquote religious institutions to destroy our freedom. That's going to be our topic, at least in this segment. But before we start that, not to overload all of you quickly, but can you very briefly tell us what recently happened to you in the last month at the Daily Kos and a little bit of your journey out of a certain political faith?
Sure. I was in production on a documentary called Not Welcome about the construction of a 53,000 square foot mega mosque in the middle of the Bible Belt. Simultaneously, I was invited to write a number of articles for Michael Moore, Common Dreams, and I ended up writing about 109 articles for Daily Kos, popular liberal blog that gets about 1 million visitors a day. Towards the end, I felt that I had really missed the point with Islam. I had really painted a picture of local Muslims being victimized by anti-mosque people without asking any of the right questions about Islam and looking very deeply. So I wrote an article for Daily Kos on that subject, and there was a pretty big backlash as a result of that coming from a site called loonwatch.com. Their response was to label me the loon at large, take my photograph and my name and paste this over Islamic blogs all over the world with copy at the bottom that I think translated to any serious jihadist would mean enemy of Allah, insulting Islam. And of course we know how that goes in certain countries.
Just to interrupt quickly, this is actually bizarre and in some ways grotesque and inhumane in the sense that Loonwatch on the one hand is trying to paint you as an extremist,
right,
but yet it's putting you somewhat at risk of losing your life because it knows that your life might be at risk when it does put you on that kind of...
There's no way they don't know that they're doing that. They're well aware, as we all are, what happens with Danish cartoons or Theo Van Gogh, who made a 10-minute short film about the mistreatment of women in Islam, Salman Rushdie, Ayaan Hirsi Ali, and the list goes on and on and on.
But in some ways it's like, this isn't a violent religion, don't say it is, but if you say it is, we're going to help them kill you.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
But to make things just very quickly then, you were fired from the Daily Kos?
Banned.
Yeah. And your reaction to this and your thoughts about it. Why can't you tell the truth about Islam at that institution /blog?
I would say, with the benefit of retrospect, the answer is very simple. At first, that was confusing. If you'd asked me on the day of, that would have been a very baffling question for me to answer. I would say within the liberal culture, there really isn't tolerance for a wide range point of views. You toe the party line or you're out.
Yeah.
And I think of the hundreds of comments criticizing negatively my 3 articles for the Daily Kos, I don't know if anyone read my articles. They just said Islamophobe, right-winger, bigot.
And they engage in this kind of name-calling. Doris, what do you think about what's happened to Eric in terms of what it says about the left, and perhaps also what's happening in our society at large, that these truths cannot be said anymore?
What happened to Eric is exactly my perception as well, in that the left does not allow for any thinking that isn't directly in line with the party line, whereas the right, the conservative side, we encompass a lot of different opinions, a lot of different views. We ask each other, we challenge each other, sometimes maybe too much, and how it affects the country. It affects the country, our society, in that it allows the left and their ideology to overwhelm the right.
Doris, but you would think that leftist feminists and leftist gays and leftist humanitarians, they posture that they're for human rights. You would think that they would be concerned about people being stoned to death, people being killed, and female genital mutilation, honor killings. Where is their humanitarianism when it comes to Islam?
I think that is a total misconception on the part of the left. They don't own humanity. They don't own human rights. They don't own liberal thought.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I mean, I think their Marxism trumps their multiculturalism.
Yeah.
I mean, the idea is that if not everybody ends up with the same equal result, then something is unfair, regardless of cultural differences. So, sure, there's female genital mutilation. Sure, they treat gays badly. Sure, they want to hang them and stone them and all the rest of that. But they're not getting their fair share of the world's wealth, and therefore we have to overlook that in favor of wealth redistribution. We're not allowed to look at cultural differences and say, well, maybe they're poor, maybe their country stinks because they're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
Because that would imply that not all result, that their responsibility is linked with results, in other words. And so, yeah, it's problematic for sure.
And maybe a country's not successful when 50% of human beings are locked inside a cage and not allowed out and not allowed to work, right?
Maybe.
Ladies and gentlemen, let us get to this. Eric, although you have had this run-in, you're changing some of your views, you're very critical of Islam. At the same time, one can't put you in a political straitjacket. You also don't agree with a lot of the people that were opposing the building of the mosque as you first started out. Tell us a little bit about your views about the right to build a mosque in America.
Well, I would say as of this moment in time, I pretty much disagree with people who say legally the Park 51 mosque just shouldn't be allowed to be built, or this mega mosque in Murfreesboro, they just shouldn't be allowed to build it. I think the law makes it very clear that, at least as of now, the government views Islam as a religion, and they're protected under the First Amendment. So they can have whatever wacky ideas they want. They can say any crazy things they want to, just like the Scientologists or any other group. I think when that crosses over into, say, treason or breaking the law, that's a different matter. We already have laws in the book. I really don't think we need
What
special
will you say
Sharia
about
laws
those
for that.
people that would say that Sharia law itself is treason? What if somebody used that argument that this is a political ideology that's preaching the destruction of the United States? How do we deal with this problem?
I think that that's too broad a statement to Sharia law as treason. Which part of Sharia law? The part that says you have to pray 5 times a day? I don't see that as treasonous. So if you say the practice of Sharia law is treason and somebody prays 5 times a day, we're getting into dangerous kind of fascistic territory.
But it is the belief of Islam in the end that Sharia should rule the world and that Sharia should override the U.S. Constitution.
Sure.
Doris, what do you think of this?
I don't see how in Sharia law that you can take out one part and say this part's okay, this part's not okay. That's the problem with Islam, is that it's an entire ideology and you take the whole package. You can't pick and choose like you can in other religions, like people do in other religions. So I agree with you. As of right now, it's legal. Islam is considered a religion.
What if the majority of people, like let's say in the community that you were at, were very afraid, very frightened, and an entire community does not want a mosque on its territory?
I'm conflicted because I want the rule of law, but if an entire community is afraid and for the most part can be said legitimately afraid, I think that there has to be some reconsideration.
Ben, let's get to you. And what if there's evidence that the Muslim Brotherhood is involved?
See, that's where it starts.
That the mosques are preaching hate, etc.
I mean, I think that a significant background check is really the answer to all of this, right? I don't think that the First Amendment allows banning of building of mosques. I don't think that it allows for communities to ban a mosque being built in their neighborhood. But I do think that laws on the books or laws that should be on the books should look at the source of funding for these mosques. If it's coming from terrorist groups or terrorist-connected groups, or things like the Holy Land Foundation or CARE or ISNA, all of which are associated with terrorist groups, then it's pretty clear that if any sort of money is coming from those groups to the building of a mosque, then that mosque should not be built, because then it's infected the mainstream. But yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I think that Sharia law does have to be separated out in terms of, look, I'm not going to say that, like, if somebody wants to go to an Islamic court for divorce, that's against some sort of American law. It's not. You have the ability to enter into a contract in America, a private contract that allows you to go to an Islamic court the same way that, for example, in the Jewish community, you're allowed to go to a Beit Din if you want to get certain things solved. That's one thing. But I think that it's a different story if you're going to talk about political Islam, which, as Doris said, is intertwined. But I think that we have to separate it out legally.
Brief concluding statement for this segment, Eric?
Well, it's tricky because there's intentional deception going on in the Islamic world. I've conducted interviews on camera with imams asking this question, and the party line is always, within Sharia, we are instructed to follow the laws of the land of the country we're in. Of course, that does contradict with about 1,400 years of history, but that is their talking point. So we kind of have to wait and see what they actually do. And until they do anything, I think our hands are kind of tied.
Some are arguing that what if we wait too long, the way, for instance, that, Bruce Brower has a book, While Europe Slept. If we're asleep, what if we wake up too late? Doris? Concluding thought?
If we wake up too late, it's going to look a lot like the Holocaust looked.
And
they woke up too late.
You think it could be that bad?
Well, I can't project. I can't even imagine. But I do believe that nobody believed that the Holocaust was going to happen, and it did.
Ben? I don't think it's going to get to that point. I think that what it would look more like is France or Britain, right? I mean, a state with a significant Muslim population. But I think the real key is that we can't allow our law enforcement agencies to be intimidated by charges of Islamophobia. Right? I mean, that's the real key. Let's make sure that we investigate all the charges that are against people. Let's make sure that we check everything out. And don't be cowed by the left's political correctness, which is a Maoist term instituted to intimidate the opposition.
Thank you very much. We've come to the end of our first segment of the Glazov Gang. Join us for the second segment when we continue our discussion to build or not to build a mosque in America. Join us then.